All right, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about the strategy for fulfilling the speaking task 2, the independent task 2. Now, as I mentioned here, and as I think I mentioned in the last video, or at least on the previous pages in this course, starting sometime in 2018, the makers of the exam started changing the exam a little bit. It's right now, as I'm recording this video, and it's August of 2019, they're in the process of making some changes to the exam. Now, as soon as those changes are complete and they are set, then I will make the necessary changes to the course. In the meantime, I will be adding information about the old test, which is the one that has been the same since 2004 or something like that, and also about the new changes. And then, of course, once the new changes are set, then I will make the necessary changes so you'll have both information. Now, as far as this particular task type, the change is really minor. Basically, traditionally, this task would give you two options that you would choose from. As I mentioned in this example, some people would prefer to go to a traditional language school to learn a new language. Other people might prefer to take an online course. Which do you prefer? Okay, so here we have two options, the traditional language school or the online course. In the new version, they might add a third option. So in this example, we say to go to a traditional language school or hire a private tutor, and this one to study with a textbook on their own or to go to an online course. Now, this one here, the traditional language school and private tutor, you could think of those as two different things, but it's kind of put together because most private tutors actually work through a traditional language school. So here we have three different options. So really, the way that you answer this is the same. You just have to choose one out of these two or three. And on this page here, I give you an example response for the traditional 2-option choice and the new 3-option choice. So really, that is about the only thing that's different as far as the new changes for this particular task type. But as I say here, there's nothing to worry about because the way that you handle this task is exactly the same. Now, if you're watching this video on YouTube and you're not in the TOEFL Excellence course, you won't be able to hear these recordings here, but I will be adding some examples in videos onto YouTube as well. But otherwise, if you're in the course, make sure to listen to both of these examples. And you'll see that the way that you handle it is the same, even though you still have only 45 seconds to do so. The only difference is that you wouldn't really spend as much time explaining possibly the third option. So let's go through this strategy. Now, first of all, you read the task on the screen. And just like with the first speaking task, the first independent task, do not wait for the recording to say exactly what is written on the screen in front of you, because you could probably read it in a matter of seconds. Whereas if you wait for the recording, it could take 2 or 3 times longer to do that. And then it will also be speaking to you the directions for the particular task, and then there's a pause, and then it says, prepare your answer now, and then there's a beep, and then you have your 15 seconds. So while it's going through all of that recording, you could be writing your notes for this task. So this is the second part of that. Disregard the directions for the task. In other words, don't listen to what the person is speaking through the headphones. Once you see what the options are, once you read this and know what the options are, immediately start going to writing your notes. So here we have 2 options. So on your page, now I didn't give examples of the notes in this particular one because there's really no structure for the notes. You just write down either option 1, option 2, or you just actually write what the option is. Language school, online, something like that. And if you have time, specifically with the 2-option version, if you have time and you can think of it easily, just try to write one good thing and one bad thing about each option. If you can't think of a good and a bad thing for each of the options, that's fine. Obviously, for whichever option you choose, you would think of a good thing for that and a bad thing for the other option. Now, the same is true with the 3-option choice. Obviously, with the third option, you might not really have enough time to speak about that very much. But it's still the same process. You just say why you would choose the option that you did choose over the other options. Now, there's another interesting thing, and I mentioned this in the previous video, that you can actually say something good about the option that you didn't choose and still fulfill the task just fine. Like you might say that even though a lot of people might prefer to go to a traditional language school because that's the way it's always been done for years and years, I think that doing the online version would be better for me because. So there is a way to talk about the option without saying something bad or negative about it. You can actually say something good about it, but still explain why you chose the other one. So we've already talked about writing the notes as soon as you know what the options are. Obviously, you follow the directions because since you're going through this course or watching this video, you will know what the directions are for this task. And just like with the first one, it says, give explanations and examples. Now, it might only be that you have one explanation for each thing or one example. That's fine. You don't have to give multiple explanations for each option or multiple examples for each option because there might not be time. But just make sure that you have at least one reason why your option is good or the other one is bad. So as far as how much detail you put into your response, this is where the practicing with a clock comes in. So you should definitely practice each example many, many times before the exam. The reason for this is just like with the first independent task is to give you an idea of how long that 45 seconds actually is, what it actually feels like. So this will give you an idea of how much information you can actually put into your answer. The way that you actually speak the response should be individual to you. There are some master skills that we'll talk about in the master skills lesson. But the main thing is that you practice with the clock so that you know how much information you can put in to that 45 seconds because you don't want your response to get cut off and you also don't want to rush so fast that you finish speaking your response and there's still a lot of time left. If there's anything more than 3 to 5 seconds of time, you're going to get graded down because there's going to be this airtime at the end of the recording. And so that's why you practice with the clock. It's not necessarily so that you practice as many different types of examples because you'll never know what they're going to talk about, but it's just about how much detail that you can put in for each one of the options that you speak about. So that's really the whole strategy. Once you see the task on the screen and you know what the options are, immediately start writing the notes. If you can, write one good and one bad thing about each option. If you can't think of one good and one bad for each one, don't stress, don't try to push yourself because you only have 15 seconds or 20 if you start writing your notes immediately. But you have to have at least one reason or example for each one of the options to say why you chose it or why you didn't choose it. And then just practice your examples as many times as you possibly can until you have it down perfectly, and then move on to a different example. We have a few different examples in this course, and of course there are plenty of different examples through different textbooks and other places that you can find them online. And just like I will be posting example responses on YouTube videos and also blog posts and things like that, I'll give other examples for you to practice with. Those will be found in the blog posts and also on the YouTube channel. So just make sure that for each example that you work with, practice it as many times as you possibly can until you have it down perfectly. And that's really it. So we will move on to the tricks and the traps of this particular task type in the next lesson. So thank you for stopping by, and we will see you there.